We're going to go to our next caller, and the person's name is Marcus, he, him, coming out of Texas, the Lone Star State. And Marcus wants to ask how to use economic betterment to guilt religious people into following suit. I don't know what that means. Following suit on what? Marcus, you are on the air on Talk Heathen with Phil and Johnny. So what do you mean by that, Marcus?
First of all, thank you for taking my call. And just real quick, Phil, glad to see you on more of the shows of the ACA. I think you've been on like AXP a couple times.
Or I have indeed. Maybe. Well, I'm honored that you think that's a good idea. Thank you.
Yeah, and you said it was Johnny is the other host?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure I got the names right. So
Johnny P.
Yeah,
P. Emphasis on P. On P. Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
Johnny P.
Thanks. What I have is maybe kind of a thought experiment, but I think it could possibly turn into something that would be of betterment to people. Basically, what I'm talking about is it seems like at least a lot of the religious people I know tend to think that they are more moral, better behaving because they have this system of religion behind them, and that atheists without the system apparently don't know how to act. So this kind of spurred off of a conversation I had with one of my coworkers when we are kind of whispering in low tones because we're atheists in a not necessarily atheist organization, but we were kind of talking about ways, is it possible to kind of play off of that religious person's feeling of, I guess for lack of a better word, superiority, at least moral superiority, and put them in a situation where these sinful atheists are doing something good, and they can't be shown up. The example I said, and I think it was a brilliant thing because we commonly order like the takeout food services. I don't know if I can say the names of what they are on the show, but
don't say it. Don't do it.
Okay, I won't do it. But basically, we thought of coming up with like maybe like a hashtag concept, something like hashtag atheists tip better.
Yeah.
So basically, we put it out there that we as an atheist group recognize the position that people are putting themselves in, delivering us food or delivering us groceries or doing the essential stuff that you guys always applaud people for at the end of the show. And I'm happy that you guys do that. But by putting something out there, number one, that atheists are doing something better than religious people, I'm wondering, and maybe I'd love to hear Phil's input on this, knowing he's got the financial background, or if he has even maybe some other ideas for this. Do you guys think it would compel or even offend? I'm happy if we're offending religious people into being better tippers, being better human beings.
Well, one thought that I have from time to time on my podcast, The Phil Ferguson Show, by the way, I do a segment called Church Money, where people go into a church. Don't be malicious or jerks about it. But if you happen to be in a church, maybe you're forced to go into a church because that's where you vote. Maybe you're there because of a baptism or a wedding or whatever reason you're there. Look around by the front door or right outside of the main chapel, I guess. Sometimes churches have their budgets out for the parishioners, and you can just pick up a copy and sneak it out. But ask your friends if they've ever looked at their church's budget, and ask them to find out what percentage of the money raised by the church goes to helping people. Now, maybe their church is an incredible exception, and they do give a lot of money. But many, many churches, the amount of money that actually goes to helping people and goes to helping people in your community is vanishingly small. I have seen some churches where they're struggling and they can't even pay their own bills. And so not a single dollar goes out. Some churches might have $1 million budget. And at the end of the day, $10,000 goes to a mission in Haiti, which doesn't really even help sometimes. And so that'd be something to talk about as far as money is concerned. If they think that religious people, because they're giving 10% of their income, which on average they're not anywhere close. And again, that's something you can see in church budgets. I think for the average church goer, not counting, some religions that are much more emphatic about knowing what you make and what you donate, probably 3 to 5% is what most people are going to give. A lot of them give 0. And then all that money goes to the church. And even though they get property tax free, they're not paying taxes on the property. They're not helping provide for the police and the fire and the school. They're not kicking money into the local government. A lot of the people that work in a church don't pay Social Security tax, so they're not paying into that system. There's all these things that are big negatives that they're not playing fair. They're not helping out us as people. But then actually get into the budget and find out what percentage of their church, what percentage of their budget actually goes to help somebody. And it's trivially easy to beat that, because you can just go to somebody and say, well, you give $1,000 a year and 3% of it goes to helping somebody. That's $30. I'm going to give $50 right now. Go ahead and top it, because your church isn't. I mean, I don't know if that helps at all, but that's something I think about.
Yeah. And that's
I
often.
hadn't really. I'm sorry.
No,
I hadn't
Marcus,
really
please
thought of
go. Please.
Oh, thank you, Johnny. I hadn't thought of that, and maybe, I guess the reason why, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things I've heard about churches is that they don't have the same obligation to make their financials known that like a regular 501c3 would. They can kind of.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that so technically, I think churches are 501c3s in, I don't know, all practical purposes, except for they don't have to report the money. And so it kind of defeats the whole purpose of being recognized as a 501c3. Some churches do that because they think it's important to do. Most churches don't. But like I said, someone in the church knows. And sometimes they put that in print, because the vast majority of people inside of the church on any given day are people that are members of that church. So some churches want to keep that information very secret. Some have a more open attitude and share it. And like I said, you might find the documents there. Or if someone goes to their church and you're talking about money, ask them, do they know how much their church gives locally to help people out? And they might say, well, I don't have any involvement with that. Are you interested? Are you curious?
Yeah.
Can you ask? Can you find out? Can you get the budget? Go ahead, John.
When we've heard so many times on the various shows and in our lives that as non-believers, we don't have a morality or a basis for our morality, or where do we get our morals from? Yada, yada, yada. It's just kind of, there's an inertia that people will repeat that talking point, shoot from the hip, and they'll throw that one out, and they think that's a good one. And then upon closer examination, we realize that the morality that most people follow is not the morality that's laid out in loving detail in the holy books of their preference. Getting people to examine that can have a really good effect upon getting them to second guess their beliefs. Well, I don't need religion to be a good person. Okay, what else do I have? Why else am I doing this religion thing? Is it to go to heaven, or whatever it might be? And so too, people just kind of assume that religious people who believe, and religious organizations are a positive force in the world because they are behind a lot of the charities. Now, we've pointed out that, well, part of that is because of history, that religious organizations have existed for so long, so they've had an opportunity to develop those networks, that they have directed funds or social causes for a long time because there were no non-believing groups. They've had, thousands of years to establish those connections. And now that non-believers can exist, or there are other facets of society that don't involve everyone in the village going to the cathedral or the town church. Sorry, a village wouldn't have a cathedral, but the church on Sunday, that they can have other social ties, whatever that might be, that those groups can make charitable donations. And we know that they do. Spreading that question, what percentage of your weekly tithing donation goes toward actually helping people, as opposed to buying shoe polish for the preacher, or whatever, paying for printing costs at your church. Because although I think somebody in the chat just said Pew Research shows that religious people donate at a higher rate than non-believers, I think that is true. I think I did see that as well. I think we covered that in the nonprofits. They throw into that bucket donations to the church. The church itself is a charity. But again, who cares if it's 3% or if it's a very small percentage of that money actually going toward helping people who aren't the Creflo Dollars, the Joel Osteens, the Charlie Preacher men out there who are spreading the good word. Asking that question might encourage thoughtful believers to examine, and then at the very least, put pressure on their church leaders to direct a greater percentage of that funds to helping people. So I think that's a great point. Someone else in the chat said, and I think I need to mention this, saying atheists tip better, paying servers for their work, and food delivery people and other people for their efforts. First of all, we're not going to make the world a better place by tipping better. We need to get rid of tips and make sure that those folks are getting a better wage, I think. But until that happens, tipping better is a good thing. No, it's not just to spite religious people, because here's what's going to happen. Let's say this catches on. All right, atheists tip better, and the atheists will be maybe shamed or inspired to tipping better, to treating these folks who do the service for us with a bit more of love. And by love, I mean money, because love rings are great, but they don't pay the bills. But a theist seeing that, if they're a real shitty theist, they're just going to be mad. But I think a theist taking it in the right spirit is going to be like, all right, I'm game. Let's do it. We tip better too. And who's the winner here? The winner is the people in the service industry who are just getting better tips all around, as opposed to getting T's and P's written on their check. Here's a Bible verse for your tip. Take your Bible verse and shove it up your ass. I need money. My student loans aren't going to get paid by, citations to Corinthians. I need some Lincolns to make some payments there. So I think that's a great idea. And, again, spread the word. But again, I don't think that's the end. That's just a stopgap measure to make sure that those who do the work get the pay. Marcus, thoughts?
I mean, I agree. And that was just a example of kind of the concept, because the more concept I'm thinking of is that, at least in my opinion, what I see in politics in the world, you have and I don't want to characterize all religious people this way, but I see a lot of religious people who are the kind of people who will sit in Sunday service, and they will sing, and they will read their Bible verses, and they will hug their fellow parishioners, and then they will walk out the door and step over the homeless person without trying to help them, without doing anything for them, and even many times with the look of disgust as, how dare you come onto this hallowed ground and deface it with yourself. I mean, it feels like, and they're perfectly able to keep this disparity in their heads. I'm going to be wonderful to my fellow parishioners, and I can be as crappy as I want to be to those people not in my in-group. So I'm just more thinking, can we take this? I feel like if they are trying to hold this moral high ground and say, we believe in God, God commands us to be good to our fellow man, be good stewards to each other. But they're seeing this group of people who are not with their God, who are not with their religion, and are, at least on the surface, behaving better than them, taking their fellow man. I mean, it's like the Good Samaritan kind of.
Yeah.
Not atheists are not Samaritans necessarily, but I'm just saying it's this fable of, well, I don't want to appear worse than this person who is in a godless heathen, pun intended.
Yeah, I think it comes down to that this is part of the narrative that keeps people in religion. And, just another way, the phrase I like to use is that you aren't moral because of the Bible. You're clearly moral in spite of the Bible.
Yep.
Because if you actually read it, if you actually followed what was in it, you would not be fit to be a member of our society. And that's kind of the point that I would make to them.
Yeah. Marcus, a thought that I have is those theists who would step over an impoverished person after leaving church, they're not going to be tipping well. And we've got folks like that in our community as well. And I think those people in our community who would step over a homeless person without even a care for the downtrodden in our society, they're not one that tips better. They're cut from the same cloth as that theist when it comes to compassion, when it comes to helping people who are in desperate need. I would suggest, and I've said this before, that for many people, religion is just a framework to justify your behavior, to frame your conscience, and those who are good, who are theists, will thank Muhammad or whoever, Thor, for their good deeds. And those who are atheists will say, oh, I do it because it's a fellow human, and I believe that we should help each other out, whatever. And those who are the shitheel theists will say, well, Jesus has no love for for the homosexual, and so I don't like them, and I will, or Odin, or I don't know, someone like that. And then the atheist will do the same thing. Well, science proves that it's just these kind of people. They just use that framework as justification. And so who knows, maybe someone listening in the audience it'll take this to heart and realize that they're no better than the shitty theists they look down on. So Marcus, thank you so much for calling us. We're going to let you go.